Live from Moscow, this is RT International. Thank you for joining us. A nationwide protest against low wages has gripped cities across America, with tens of thousands taking to the streets. More than 200 cities have seen mass rallies. The people behind the movement, called Fight for $15, they claim it's the largest protest by low-wage workers in American history. RT's Marina Portnaya followed one of the marches, this one in New York.
This movement began 2 years ago here in New York City when just 200 fast food workers walked off the job protesting low wages. Today, thousands of employees from retail, airport services, hospitality, home care industries, as well as unions, have joined the fight for a $15 an hour wage. Now, here in New York City, thousands have been flooding the streets, clogging intersections, even staging die-ins in front of fast food restaurants. Clearly, this campaign has gained tremendous momentum. Now, in New York, the minimum wage is $8.75 an hour, not nearly enough to keep up with the cost of living in New York City. How is it surviving on minimum wage of $8.75?
Very difficult. Very difficult. Sometimes you end up having to get two jobs to be able to make ends meet.
Minimum wage just doesn't cut it. You won't. It's either rent or food, and that's wrong.
America's totally out of whack. We have a very small percentage of people making a phenomenal amount of money, and the rest can't even pay their rent. And it's worse than it's ever been, and we got to stand up. We have to ask for a bare minimum.
According to a study released by the Berkeley Center for Labor Research, state and federal governments spend more than $150 billion a year on anti-poverty programs used by working families. And where do you think that money is coming from? American taxpayers. So essentially, Americans are subsidizing these large multinational corporations that won't pay their workers a living wage. These people on the street here in New York and in 200 cities across the country are demanding $15 an hour. And by all appearances, it seems that this battle is far from over. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Dramatic pictures are emerging from Siberia, where devastating wildfires have been raging for several days. 29 people are reported dead, with hundreds more injured. More than 1,000 homes have been damaged in these fires. And they started in southern Siberia 4 days ago, spreading quickly amid very strong winds. And several regions have been put on a state of high alert. All right, to some other global headlines in brief. Clashes have broken out in southern Mexico at a rally against migrant abuse. Riot police were deployed to contain the crowd. Activists were voicing their anger over the treatment of Central Americans who passed through Mexico on their way to the United States. This came after 100 migrants were caught hiding in a freight truck and arrested. Thousands of undocumented workers pass through Mexico illegally every year. A suicide bomber has attacked a UN base in Mali, killing at least 3 people and injuring 16 others. The attacker was shot dead while trying to force his way in, but his bomb-rigged vehicle did blow up. Human Rights Watch says violence is on the rise in Mali 2 years since the French-led intervention against Islamic militants. A sandstorm has covered parts of northern China, including Beijing. Visibility dropped to less than 10 meters in the capital, disrupting traffic and causing power blackouts. Citizens wore face masks to protect themselves from the sand and dust clouds. Authorities are telling everybody to stay indoors. Now, the U.S. Congress has held a hearing with the title, Confronting Russia's Weaponization of Information. Several lawmakers called for new ways of fighting back against the Russian media message.
Russian propaganda.
Russian line.
RT seems to be financed exclusively by the government, which means that they can exclude anything that does not favor the government.
There is an intent to actually advocate and manipulate a war.
A war where you kind of defeat another side in the realms of perception, economy, culture, without ever actually invading them.
At just disrupting and deceiving and causing chaos.
But not everyone is convinced that such a threat even exists. We heard from philosopher Noam Chomsky.
So if the House wants to study what you call the weaponization of the media. They can look right at the front pages of the newspapers that they get every day. The idea that there should be a network reaching people which does not repeat the U.S. propaganda system is intolerable.
Among those who gathered on Capitol Hill were Russia experts, journalists, and even a former RT employee. RT's In the Now takes a closer look at that hearing.
Do you remember Liz Wall?
Cannot be part of a network funded by the Russian government that whitewashes the actions of Putin. I'm proud to be an American and believe in disseminating the truth, and that is why, after this newscast, I'm resigning.
Well, right after she stumbled to read out her resignation live on air, this selfie appeared with no other than neocon journalist and activist James Kirchick. This led to an investigation claiming the whole thing was in fact staged. It turned out that a Kirchick-linked think tank was tweeting about Wall's resignation before the actual stunt even happened. Tune in to RT. Something big will happen now. Well, that's how the now Russia expert Liz Wall got her 5 minutes of fame.
I had scribbled down some thoughts in the bathroom, actually, on this day when the coverage of Ukraine was really, I mean, it was pure propaganda. When I worked there, I didn't speak to Vladimir Putin on a daily basis. He didn't tell me exactly what to say.
Who's actually talking to you that we can't see? Is it mostly men wearing camo pants and no shirts, saying, like, he's good, yes, Liz, yes, he's good? What are your coworkers like?
They are American.
So where are these Russians who are putting the pressure on you? I don't understand.
What do you do now?
What do I do? Well, it's all happening very, very quickly. I'm taking it one day at a time.
Have you had any job offers?
It's all been happening really, really quickly.
Have you had any job offers? Who has called you up?
I don't know. To be honest, I wasn't expecting the firestorm of controversy.
I know that, but
and
if people
feedback
called you
that
up,
this
if people said, hey, you know, we admire what you did, we want to talk to you.
I don't know.
But getting back to today's push to prove RT is a threat without facts, numbers, examples, here's why the Russia bashers got together.
Russia today can be heard in English. Do we have an equivalent that can be heard in Russian?
The idea is to spend money on countering Russia's so-called propaganda, and there is a tool for that. The Broadcasting Board of Governors, or BBG, the organization behind a set of Cold War-era media projects funded exclusively by the U.S. government. That's exactly what we, by the way, were criticized for today. Secretary Kerry is among its board members. This year's budget is $721 million. And then next year, they'll get even more cash. That's already been penciled in. To do what? More of this.
Corruption is state policy in Russia. It isn't a bug in the software, it's a feature. It's not a virus threatening the system, it's essential to the system.
Convincing me the man voicing his own thoughts, not backing them up with facts or examples, is a trend. It's not propaganda, according to them.